As you probably know by now, I'm a fan of the Monoprice SlimRun Ethernet cables. Here's a typical Ethernet cable of the old type, and the SlimRun, you can tell, is significantly slimmer. It's a lot slimmer, and it's a lot more flexible. So it's great for doing interconnects and using Ethernet cables for non-Ethernet work. So, interconnecting devices, for example. What's great about them is that you have four twisted pairs, so you have 8 wires inside of them, which is really nice. The downside is that the connectors are big. So in cases where I'm really tight on space, the cable itself is great, connectors not so great. So we all know that I don't like hard wiring, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And in this case, for the Kui Bluetooth device, I'm going to hardwire this cable in to the between the display unit and the switch box unit. So first off, let's take a look at the connectors. The way these are all usually machine made, and the wires inside are not stripped. So what happens is when you're doing this, if you were doing this manually, you spread out the wires, you press it into the connector, and then use a crimping tool. And what the crimping tool does is it presses down each of these 8 gold contacts, and they have a little sharp pointy point that actually stabs through the insulation of the wire to make the connection. So it's not stripped or tinned or anything. It's just cut straight, use the tool. And if you really, really wanted to annoy yourself, you could even not use a tool and individually press them down with a small regular screwdriver. So what I did with this is I first took a look at the cabling, and this rubber flexible part actually just kind of unclicks and slides off. And then I used a pair of side cutters to cut away the polycarbonate plastic just to get a closer look at this to see if there would be any way for me to get at this any better. And there's not, which I kind of figured, but I wanted to try. So it becomes the good old fashioned snip the ends off and throw them away. In Now you got to deal with, okay, how do you get at these tiny little wires inside? Well, the first thing you got to do is chop off the end, which I already did. And then you're going to need actually probably two different sizes of wire strippers. You're going to need a bigger one to do the outer sheathing, and you're going to need a small one that goes to at least 30 gauge for the little inside twisted pair wires. And the way that you do it, this is not the best way, the only way. This is the way that I do it. But you start with the biggest and see if that's going to work at all, and it doesn't. And in this case, it ends up being, I think, 12 gauge solid, which is 14 stranded. And use your tool to make that cut into the outer. Now, the thing is, you have to be careful with this so that you don't strip or nick the wires inside. So one thing that's often done incorrectly is you hold it through there and you just yank. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that because even though it's easier, as you're yanking, you're going to nick the little tiny wires that are inside here. So that's why part of the reason why they have a little grippy part on these tools is so that you could grab it and yank it and pull it like that. And there you haven't nicked anything, hopefully. Now you want to make sure to check at that cut point to make sure that you haven't nicked any wires. If you've nicked wires, cut it off and start again. This is the old joke. You could start out with a 6-foot cable and you end up with about a 2-foot cable after you've nicked too many wires. So if you're wondering why Ethernet's called twisted pair, well, that's because inside are twisted pairs. So there's a brown, white, green, white, blue, white, orange, white. And These were test ones I did earlier, and you could see I improperly stripped these, so I got nicking along the insulation, which would cause me tons of heartache in the future. So I didn't even bother. Cut it off, try again. So that is that. And then always make sure to cut back plenty to give yourself plenty of extra room, because you can always shorten a wire. You cannot lengthen a wire, not easily, at least not reliably. So in this case, I've taken this 3-foot cable. I've cut at least 2 inches of the outer covering off, and then I've got the 4 twisted pairs of the 8 wires there. Then you need your other size wire strippers, and gently untwist some of these, and then these are 30 gauge wires. They're 30 gauge what it was, stranded, 30 gauge stranded copper. So they're very small. So in this case, what I will do is I will take off probably about a 1/2 inch, more than I need, of insulation off of each of these wires. Then I will take the stripped wires and I'll tin them. So I will dip them into my solder pot. So I've got a thing of molten solder that I keep on my workbench, and I will dip the ends of the wires into liquid rosin, and then they'll all get dipped into the hot lead or the tin base, and that'll tin everything. That'll make soldering these by hand far easier. One video I'm going to do in the future is talking about how to make soldering easier, and one of the key things is always tin your leads. Oh, especially if you're using stranded wire, which you should be using in most cases. Always tin your leads. It seems like you're spending more time in the beginning, but it saves so much time and so much heartache in the long run. And I'll have a video about that in the future. So at this point, I've got these. They don't look nicked. I will strip off the ends of these with the 30 gauge size and tin everything, and then I'll crack open the cooey box and solder these into place. So wish me luck. I think I'm a little bit shorter than the original 3 feet, but I think I've still got at least 2 feet going on here. So hopefully that's going to be enough. Well, that's the end of excitement for Ethernet cables for now. I hope you've enjoyed this fascinating video.